We're going to discuss a whole bunch of different operators from fluxes and parallel fluxes and monos coming up over the next few sessions. Almost all of these are going to be done in the context of something I call the BigFraction Case Studies. And this is just kind of an excuse to motivate the need for things like parallel computing and asynchronous computing, because we're going to be processing values that take a long time to do their thing. And so we're going to use these case studies to showcase all these operators in monos, fluxes, and parallel fluxes. So what is the BigFraction class? BigFraction is an arbitrary precision fraction abstraction, and it utilizes big integers for the numerator and denominator. So big integers themselves are arbitrary precision integers where you can do integer operations like multiplication, subtraction, addition, division, and so on, up to an arbitrary level, unlike the built-in native versions that kind of peter out after you go past the number of bits of resolution in an integer, which is, I believe, typically 32 bits. Again, big integers give you arbitrary precision integers and associated operators. You can take a look here. They're a standard piece of Java. There's a bunch of factor methods defined on big fractions that we use to reduce fractions. Hopefully you remember fraction reduction from 4th grade or whenever it was when you learned them. Basically, here's some examples just to refresh your memory if you forgot what you learned in 4th grade. We have 44 55ths is 4 fifths, 12 24ths is 1/2, 144 2/16ths is 2/3. So that's what it means to reduce fractions. There's also factor methods that can create non-reduced fractions and then later reduce them. Why would you ever want to do this? Because it takes a while to do reductions on large, big fractions, and therefore we might want to run those things in the background. So we can create them in an unreduced state in the foreground and then reduce them and do other things to them in a background thread, thereby showcasing the need for concurrency and parallelism as provided by Project Reactor. You could also, of course, perform arbitrary precision fraction arithmetic. So here we can take 18/4 and multiply it by 2/3, which leads to the value of 3. And then you can also create mixed fractions from so-called improper fractions. Improper fractions are kind of weird. It's a funny name. It's kind of like imaginary numbers. It basically just means that you have a fraction that is in 18/4, which can be mixed to be 4 and 1/2. So that's what an improper fraction is. It hasn't been turned into a mixed fraction. It's not an unreduced fraction, because this could have been reduced from something larger, but it is improper, which again is just kind of a weird term. But oh well, whoever invented fraction terminology thousands of years ago came up with that term, so we have to live with it. So let's talk a bit about the BigFraction case studies. And all these case studies are going to do things like create big fractions, reduce big fractions, multiply big fractions, display big fractions, and it'll do them in a bunch of different ways. We'll start out doing the real easy stuff with synchronous operations, and then we will progress to doing them asynchronously and concurrently using the Project Reactor framework features. So we've got a bunch of mono case studies, which we may or may not really discuss in detail, depending on the amount of time, because we don't use them quite as much as we do fluxes and parallel fluxes. But if we get to them, and they're all available here in my GitHub repository, it'll show us how to use all these super cool operations like zip width, which sounds like something that Dr. Evil would say from the Austin Powers movies, and other things like subscribe on to run the processing in other threads besides the main thread, the calling thread. What we will focus on for sure is a whole bunch of Flux case studies that demonstrate a slew of operators that we're going to be using in our assignments, things like from iterable, map, flat map, collect list, subscribe on, and so on and so forth, and all kinds of other fun stuff. We're also going to demonstrate how we can combine Java streams with the Project Reactor framework if you need to, mostly just for fun, to show how you can mix and match different paradigms. Not necessarily the most common thing to do. Probably better off to stick with one paradigm if you can. And I should also mention that we will also discuss quite a bit about parallel fluxes, because that's what you're going to be using for some of your assignments. So that's the end of the overview of the BigFraction case studies. You'll get used to seeing BigFraction examples. There's lots of other examples we could do too, but I found these were useful because reducing Big fractions can take a while, so it helps to run them in a background thread if you can possibly do that. And we'll look at a bunch of different ways to do that with Project Reactor.